Oh man. Sorry about that, everybody. Uh, I was ordering some lunch from Kayshawn, my assistant, some Bojangles, and lost track of time. Anyhow, hi, I'm Skip Alzheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films, and that was part of the Coronet Stock Can Library Collection ATL. They would put a three-letter code and sometimes a two-letter code. I think they started off with the two-letter codes. And so this is all the outtakes and the raw materials that were shot, and they just kept because they would reuse it in other productions. So behind me I have a film scanner, and let's watch horses, how they live. Enjoy. All right. Yeah. That's kind of nice. It's what we call a non-narrative. Lots of sounds there, and I guarantee you those sounds were added later, and some of them were not captured while the film was being made. That they were added from sound libraries. Here's Ancient World Inheritance, cornet film. Enjoy.
When most of us think of the ancient world or its civilization, we think of the age-old pyramids of Egypt, the tombs of the early Egyptian kings. We may also think of such things as the Great Sphinx, a portrait carved in stone of the Egyptian king Khafre. It is one of the largest and finest portraits ever made. We may think, too, of how small the ancient world was compared to our own. The civilized world of the ancients consisted of a territory less than half the size of the United States. Perhaps we may think the people of those times didn't know much. Look at some of the tools they had to work with. Axe blades like these, and hammers like this. They weren't much like our big modern machinery. Today, the hammering or forging of metals into any desired shape is done by huge, powerful machines, which exert tons of pressure. But ancient man worked entirely by hand to produce copper and bronze objects, which are comparable to the finest hand metal work of our time. Metal, especially gold, was also used for jewelry. It was combined with various stones and wrought into bracelets, earrings, and other decorative items. Some metals were also used as materials for coins. Ancient coins were of different shapes and sizes and were used to purchase services or goods, just as coins are used today. We also use a great deal of metal in our modern machinery, such as farm machinery. But the steel plows used now to turn the earth before we plant our crops had their crude beginnings in wooden plows invented centuries ago. We often forget that from ancient world peoples, Romans, Greeks, Hittites, Phoenicians and Hebrews, Egyptians, Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, came the beginnings of most of the things we use in present everyday life. For example, hand looms used by some American Indians today are much the same as those developed by ancient peoples as long as 6,000 years ago. Some of the linen cloth woven in ancient times has survived many centuries. Around their mummies, the ancient Egyptians wrapped layers of linen cloth. This helped preserve the mummies. This piece of ancient cloth is as finely woven as machine-made cloth today. Just as ancient man wove cloth with his hands, in early times he fashioned jars and bowls using only his hands. Some of these examples of early pottery are more than 5,000 years old and were formed in much the same manner as this clay jar is being formed by a Hopi Indian woman. This method of pottery making is crude and slow. So, to improve his pottery, ancient man developed the potter's wheel, which was widely used in ancient Egypt, Greece, and other lands of the ancient world. Modern kilns or ovens in which pottery is baked have changed very little in principle from those used centuries ago. Another material worked by some ancient peoples was glass. The Romans, as much as 2,000 years ago, developed glass blowing to a high art, as we can see in these iridescent, fragile vases. Paper is probably one of the most common things we have inherited from the ancient world. We all use paper every day. In fact, it's hard to imagine how we could get along without it. In early times, the Egyptians made paper by beating into sheets thin strips of a kind of river weed called papyrus. We use wood to make paper. Wood, like papyrus, is a vegetable fiber. In large machines, the wood is ground and shredded to a pulp, which is then bleached and pressed into sheets. We haven't added too much to the Egyptians' original and basic idea of paper making. Early peoples wrote and painted on their paper just as we do. In this papyrus painting is pictured the Egyptian belief of what happened to a person when he died. Here, the god Osiris sits in judgment as a soul is weighed against a feather, the symbol of truth. Other ancient peoples used clay tablets such as this for writing material. They wrote all kinds of things on these tablets. Letters. Translated, this reads, "To Obaya from Shamash Gamal. Illyria told me he will do as you ask if you give the orders." Agricultural records. 85 acres are dry, 210 acres lie fallow, 320 acres are ripe with grain. Orders for provisions. 3 loaves of bread, 4 quarts of ale, 3 measures of oil, some salt. These words are an early form of written communication. Our own alphabet, the Roman alphabet, had its beginning in ancient times too. Here we have the first A, which was the picture of an ox head, and the first B, which was the floor plan of a house. The A, the ox head, was called Aleph, meaning ox in early Phoenician. It developed to this figure, and finally to our A. The B, the floor plan, was called Beit, meaning house. It developed to this figure, and finally to our B. The learned ancients, priests, and officials who developed their alphabets often lived in great and grand houses. The domestic architecture of the early peoples, as reconstructed in this model, was comparable to some of the finest buildings of our modern times. This estate of a high Egyptian official had a private chapel where he worshiped, bedrooms and reception halls, and large bins for the storage of grain. All the things he needed for living were contained within the walls of his estate. But ancient people sometimes traveled from their homes. About 2,000 years ago, the Romans developed the art of road building. These roads connected some of the important centers of the Roman Empire. They were paved with large, flat stones and were about as well built for their time as our modern highways are today. Road building is part of the science of engineering, another of our inheritances from the ancient world. Another science we have inherited is astronomy. Today we use giant telescopes and radio telescopes to further our study of the stars, planets, and distant galaxies. In ancient times, astronomers, who were usually priests, had no telescopes. But from their observations of the heavens, the astronomers developed our present-day calendar, discovered the rotation of the Earth, and mapped the world as they knew it. In each of these ancient lands, there was government and law. Laws were first made by the early kings or emperors. One of the oldest codes of law known to us was carved on a stone shaft. These were the laws of a king called Hammurabi. Here at the top of the shaft, we see the king receiving the laws from the sun god. His laws insisted on justice for all the people in the empire. Now, we elect groups of our own citizens who meet, discuss problems of our communities, and proceed from these discussions to make our laws. Meetings of citizens such as these are the foundations of our democracy. All these things, then, as well as a host of others, were passed down to us by the peoples of the ancient world. They contributed to the early beginnings of civilization. And so, from the small area that we call the ancient world, has come much of our cultural and scientific inheritance.
So I'm trying to thread this this next film up. See if this is gonna work. More tape. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Let's see if this works. Alright, let's. So in case you didn't know this, when we use the scanner, we're actually, besides watching it, we're also scanning it and making a file. So we're probably the only people that do that on this channel or on YouTube. This film, I have no idea what it is. The title says Afterimage, and I'm hoping that it is appropriate for a lunchtime show. We're gonna see. All right, Afterimage, enjoy.
One morning in May of 1959, when I woke, I discovered, to my shock, that I had almost no sight in one eye. And the following day, I consulted an ophthalmologist, and then later in the week another one, and I was told that I had a detached retina with a hemorrhage, and this is what had destroyed the vision. I was hospitalized. I had 2 unsuccessful operations on the eye, lost sight completely, and had a frightening experience post-operatively. I was flat on my back for 24 days. Both my eyes were bandaged. I had to be fed by someone else. But the frightening thing was the fact that all voices and all sounds converged on me, even the traffic from outdoors, people talking, and sometimes I felt as though my bed was tilted with my head way down and my feet up. I had become disoriented through the loss of the sight. About 6 months after the first 2 unsuccessful operations on my left eye, I developed glaucoma in my right eye, and in about a year and a half after that, also another hemorrhage in my right eye, and many tears, a very badly detached retina. I had 3 operations for that. And this left me with just about legally blind, which is having 10% or less of vision. Within the year, I was declared legally blind. I had a fear at night of the possibility of waking up in the morning without sight, and I slept all the time, and I still do, with a light on all night. I rest much better. If I waken, it reassures me that I can still see.
So painful, but well, first of all, I had an accident in 1950, which cost the sight of my, which eye was it? Can't remember. My right eye, yeah. And then in 1958, I had another accident which cost me the sight of my left eye. In both cases, it was due to detached retinas, which, due to my having had a number of operations, sight couldn't be restored. In 1963, I had my eyes enucleated. That is, my original eyes were replaced by plastic eyes. This is what I have now. When I became totally blind in 58, I had already completed 3.5 years of work at the Tyler School of Fine Arts, Temple University, and thought I was all washed up insofar as never being able again to do any kind of artwork whatsoever. By coincidence, I got a job at a factory for the blind, which at that time was in the Germantown section of Philadelphia. Employment there was off again, on again. In other words, there were frequent layoffs with no chance for workman's compensation during the periods of my being laid off or others being laid off. This is true of all of them. Some people spend their entire lives working in such places. And there were times when, this is almost funny now, my dog Porsche and I had to share her dog food, which was Alpo dog food, as I remember. Didn't taste bad, but
in my search for possible causes of what happened to my eyes, I can't help but tie it in with the depression. During that time, we were raising 2 small children. There was not enough food to go around. The nourishing things that we were able to get, of course, went to the children. And I felt that the malnutrition that I suffered from at that time was definitely a factor in the deterioration of my retinas. I soon realized that my life activities would be probably quite different. With loss of sight, you lose freedom of mobility and become somewhat dependent for, certainly very dependent for transportation and somewhat dependent sometimes for other things. So I was, and my family, my 2 sons were married and had families of their own, and I was reaching out for something of interest that would be worth doing. I heard just about this time, fortunately, of a class at a local arts center where I could study. The class was organized specifically for the visually handicapped, and the class was in sculpture. I think that if I hadn't had a sight problem, I might never have gotten, I probably would never have gotten into sculpture work. It's been the most rewarding thing about having a sight problem. It became a real lifesaver. I don't have much tendency to get depressed, but I was slipping into it.
I tried getting back, re-enrolling in Tyler, but the leading agency for the blind in Philadelphia at that time, the state agency, didn't see any sense in my wanting to become a blind artist. They never heard of that kind of thing before, and did not choose to give me any financial assistance. So my mother, who was alive at that time, cashed in some insurance policies which had enough money to fully cover me. It is a memory in my mind's eye of these images that can stimulate me to use sculpture or some other medium, recalling how things looked and sculpting them in clay so that those who have never seen can get a good idea of what certain things and certain scenes look like, you see. There are two guys seated outside the bar playing checkers, and I've seen this kind of thing quite often, both when I was sighted as well as after I became blind. And so I got this idea of doing a sculpture showing two guys playing checkers with a third man kneeling and watching, and a fourth figure, that of a young woman, standing and watching.
After 9 years, my doctor decided to risk removing the cataract. I was running into things. I was falling over the dog, and he was afraid that I would have a bad accident and perhaps destroy my retina completely. And it had held for 11 years, so he decided to operate on it. I had all my life been very myopic, and removing a cataract makes you extremely farsighted. Myopia is nearsightedness. With a successful cataract operation, a sight to an undamaged eye can be restored almost completely. Of course, my eye had already had so much surgery done that this couldn't be expected. Following the surgery, the doctor came in, took the bandage off, and stood close to the bed. He said, "Can you see me?" And I could see at a close range every hair in his mustache. I hadn't even seen a face for 6 years. I hadn't seen any colors for 5 or 6 years. And all of a sudden I see color and at close range detail. And it was probably the most exciting thing that ever happened to me in my life.
It wasn't until, I guess, the beginning in 1976 of the national exhibits by blind artists that I began to get widespread recognition through magazines, newspapers, television, radio. And although the income isn't any greater, it still, the recognition factor means so much that it's worth, right now as I look back on those years, all the pain and struggle that I endured.
Again, it's in this blue checkered dress with the veil, okay? And then the groom has this black velvet with an ascot, and this is his head. A velvet top, red velvet top, and a very lovely, lovely colored dress. It's a mixture. It's a calico type mixture of white background with green and red. Okay? Then this one, this figure, blonde hair. Okay, she's got a black coat on and a quilted, lovely soft purple.
I must say at this point that my self-image for many years was pretty poor, but nonetheless there was enough strength gained from my family to allow me to continue pressing forward and proving to myself that I could still do artwork just as well as anyone else. And I think that gave rise to the attitude I have now about my being blind, which is namely, in 2 words, so what?
All right. I get it. I didn't read it specifically in the comments, but I read between the lines. You know, sometimes we show a serious film, and it's hard to crack on it and riff on it and tear into it. So I'm going to make up for it right now. You can tear into this film, next film, without any regards or feeling guilty or being insensitive. Here we go. What is in a seed?
wonder.
What do you wonder, Wondercat?
I wonder what's inside a seed.
What's inside a seed? Well, if you're curious enough, you can find out.
Well, I know that when you plant seeds, you get plants. People plant seeds in their gardens to get vegetables and flowers. Farmers plant seeds to get all the plants that give us food. So I guess I know that plants grow from seeds. But how does that happen? What's inside a seed?
Why not start by looking? You could look inside this lima bean. A lima bean is really the seed of the lima bean plant. Now, the seed is cut in half and opened up. Do you see anything there?
Something's inside, but it's awfully small. Wait, I've got something that'll help. A magnifying glass. Now I can see. It looks like a teeny tiny plant inside the seed. Is that really a plant there?
Yes, it is. A baby plant.
Are those really leaves on it?
Yes, they are. And it has a stem and a root, too. But the baby plant inside the seed hasn't started growing yet. And there's another important difference between this baby plant and plants that are growing. The difference is in the leaves. Look at the leaves of this baby plant and compare them with the leaves of this plant. Can you see what the difference is?
Well, let's see. This plant's leaves are a lot bigger. And they're green.
And inside the seed?
The leaves on the baby plant aren't green. Is that really an important difference?
Yes. You see, the green material in a leaf, which is called chlorophyll, helps the plant make its own food.
Plants need food?
Yes. All living things need food. Animals need food to grow. And plants do too. Even a baby plant inside a seed. But it doesn't have chlorophyll, so it can't make its own food like other plants.
Then where does its food come from?
Look at the baby plant in the seed again. What else is in the seed?
Well, there's stuff around the baby plant. What's that?
That's the food you're looking for.
Then that must be food in the other half of the seed. So the baby plant does have food. But if the baby plant has food right there in the seed with it, why doesn't it start growing even before it's planted?
Maybe what these children are going to do next will help you discover the answer.
They're watering the ground where the seeds were planted. Do seeds need water before the little plants inside them will start growing?
Yes, but that's not all the seeds need. The weather has to be warm enough.
So that's why I couldn't plant my seed outdoors when it was very cold. But then what happens? How do baby plants get bigger?
Well, that's something we can watch with special motion pictures that make plants seem to grow fast. What we're seeing in a few seconds really takes several days to happen. Look at the lima bean seed you planted.
It's growing nicely. Look at that root coming out of the seed. It's growing down and dividing into different parts. The stem is growing up into the light, and it's carrying the seed with it.
That's right. That's the way a bean plant grows. And now look at those leaves coming out of the seed. They're green.
That means it can make its own food, and just in time, too.
Yes, all the plants that are green have started making their own food.
What do they make their food out of?
Several materials. One is a gas that's in the air. Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide.
That's right. Carbon dioxide comes into the plant through its leaves. The other material a green plant needs for making food is water.
I know where a plant gets that. People water plants. And it rains, too.
Yes, that's right. The water soaks into the soil.
So it goes down to where the plant's roots are.
Then the water and certain minerals that are in the soil travel up through the plant's stem and all along its branches to the leaves. And there, the green plant makes its own food. The plant uses this food and the minerals it gets from the soil to grow. And in that way, a young plant grows into a grown-up plant. Your plant's been growing for about a month now.
I wish it grew as fast as those special movies you showed me.
But it's been growing well because it's been getting what it needs, like the other plants here. Plants don't grow well if they don't get enough of what they need.
You mean if they don't get enough water, for instance, they'll grow slowly?
That's right. But if plants get more of what they need, they'll grow faster.
You mean more water?
Yes, but not too much.
And more sunlight and warmth?
Yes, but not too much.
And more carbon dioxide from the air? And more minerals from the soil?
But not too much.
I know. Look at these plants. They've really grown. They must be getting just the right amount of the things they need.
They are.
And mine is too. Oh, look, some of them have flowers.
Yes, but some flowers don't look the way we expect them to look. These are actually flowers too, the flowers of the oak tree.
Trees have flowers?
Yes, trees are plants, and like many plants, trees have flowers too.
Those flowers are so small, and they aren't colored very brightly. You hardly notice them.
But some trees have flowers that look more like the flowers you're used to. These flowers are on an apple tree. Apple blossoms are beautiful. And so are orange blossoms. Many of the plants in the garden you and your friends planted have pretty flowers.
My little bean plant has flowers too. They're small, but they're pretty.
Flowers are pretty, but they also do an important job for plants.
What's that?
Stay curious, and you'll find out. Changes are going to take place in the flowers, but you'll have to wait a little while for them to happen.
I see. The flowers are starting to change. The flower petals look like they're drying up. Some are falling off.
Yes, they are.
But something else seems to be happening at the bottom of the flowers, too. That part is changing into something different.
Yes, it is. Apple blossoms are becoming apples. And orange blossoms have started to become oranges.
Flowers are changing into fruits.
That's right. It's happening on the oak tree, too. The flowers are turning into acorns.
But acorns are nuts. Are nuts really fruits?
Yes, acorns are the fruits of the oak tree. And on your plant, the flowers are turning into bean pods.
But those are vegetables.
That's right. You see, some of the fruits of plants are what we call vegetables. It will take a little time before all these fruits are ripe, and then you will see what's special about the fruits of plants. And now, weeks later, the apple tree is filled with ripe red apples. Let's look inside one of these apples.
Seeds. Seeds are inside the apple.
And inside one of these oranges?
Seeds are inside the orange.
And the acorns.
And inside the acorn, is that the seed of the oak tree?
Yes, it is. And can you guess what will be inside the fruit of your bean plant?
Bean seeds, just like the one I planted. I understand. Fruits come from flowers, and seeds come from fruits. And now I know what's inside each of those seeds. A baby plant that will grow up and make its own seeds that have baby plants inside. Then they'll grow up to make, wow, that could go on forever.
I certainly hope it does.
Me too.
I get it. It's cloyingly bad. So the Wondercat episode that I would like to air is, why hasn't curiosity killed that cat? Because it is non-stop questions. It's like, God, Wondercat, get with it, man. But yes, I understand. Sometimes it's nice just to have a punching bag, just to put up there, just to take it all out on. And Wondercat, thankfully, is there for us. Thank you, Kevin, for the pill reference. And thank you all for watching today. It's gross outside, but it doesn't feel gross inside because we're watching these films and you guys are commenting on them and contributing. If you like what you saw, you can do like Kevin did and donate via the Super Thanks button, but you can also hit the thumbs up or the like button, or you can give us cash by going to ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks or Venmo at skip-Elsheimer. That is my name. And that will go to buy things like artist tape. We use a lot of artist tape to label things, to tape ends down on film, to put on cans, to put on hard drives. Artist tape. That and Sharpies. Those are things that we purchase when you donate to us. So join us tomorrow. We'll be back. We'll watch some great films. As always, please rewind and love each other. But until then, have a great rest of your day. And we'll see you soon. Bye.